I want to, for a moment, turn to the neighborhood, not just Pakistan, Dr. Tharoor, because, it's been turbulent, a neighborhood. Yes, we saw what Pakistan-sponsored terror did in Pahalgam in April, a warlike situation erupting over Operation Sindoor. Do you fear more of that is one of the concerns? Should we be concerned that Pakistan is being run at the moment by someone like General Asim Munir? Could we well see a Pahalgam Part 2? Should we be worried that Pakistan is once again on a very slippery slope at the moment towards some kind of anti-India Islamic radicalism?
I wouldn't say worried, but I'd say we have to be prepared. I mean, Pakistan is a very, very, it's a problematic state at various levels. It is a nominally civilian government that has been created by the military and is dominated by the military. So the military's agenda will always be outsized in terms of what happens in terms of the policy choices there. Secondly, it is economically fragile. It's had a lot of money coming in from various international and Western donors, and that may help give it a lifeline for a while. But economic fragility often leads to military adventurism. We've learned this in the past with the Pakistanis, and so we have to be very much prepared. I would say that the uneasy economic stabilization of Pakistan is currently in our interest, but at the same time, there is undoubtedly the sort of hard-nosed military posturing that the Pakistanis are doing because they managed to persuade themselves they won the engagements in Operation Sindoor, and they have established a new Army Rocket Force Command after the barrage of drones and rockets and missiles they sent us, and they're pursuing hypersonic technologies. Their new doctrine is something called asymmetric deterrence. All of this is not something we can lightly ignore. GDP growth 2.7% in Pakistan as opposed to about 7%, 7.2 for us, maybe more, depending on how it all works out. But we have to be very conscious that they're moving into our patches when it comes to export-led growth in textiles and agricultural goods. And of course, they also have minerals, and they've offered space to the Americans for that. They've also more or less handed over their entire cryptocurrency business to a company headed by Mr. Witkoff and the two Trump sons. So all of this gives Pakistan at least the illusion that they are in good with the West, and therefore they can perhaps, on the Saudi deal as well, I should have mentioned that, plus the continuing patronage of China, shores them up at various levels, and they might well be turning to us and say, hey, we'll do what we like, and you won't be able to retaliate because we've got all these boys in our corner. That kind of thing is something we need to be watchful about.
Right. But it's not just Pakistan, Dr. Tharoor, the rest of the neighborhood. The toppling of a government in Nepal through street protests. We are seeing rising anti-India sentiments in an increasingly unstable Bangladesh. Bangladesh, because we should particularly worry us, surely, because we've had a relatively stable relationship until now. Now we are seeing what's happening in Dhaka. Should that worry us now that it's now Bangladesh is a new front which is completely unsettled?
Well, obviously, a peaceful, stable, and calm Bangladesh is of great importance to us, because otherwise it becomes, in that notorious phrase, India's soft underbelly. And we know that Pakistan in the past, the ISI has been fishing in troubled waters through that soft underbelly. And there's also been a problem of militants in the northeast seeking refuge and obtaining safe haven in Bangladesh, and then crossing over, wreaking havoc and coming back again. Now, we obviously have fenced about 80% of the border with Bangladesh now, but there is still about 20% through which they can get through, and that's not a small matter. There is a real concern about the way in which the student leaders' provocative rhetoric has crossed all bounds, with some openly threatening to sever our seven sisters northeastern states from the rest of the country, and obviously openly talking about providing refuge to separatist elements. All of that most unfortunate, and it's coupled with the fact that the Islamist forces, the Jamaat-e-Islami in particular, have added a layer of communal anxiety to all of this. Then we've got the Sheikh Hasina problem with Dhaka's demand for her extradition to face a death sentence. Now, that's going to be something very difficult for India to do. And I think India won't do it, probably, though I don't want to prefigure what the government is doing. The government says they're studying all the legal implications. They're studying the treaty, their obligations, as well as the exceptions that have been written into the treaty. And they'll take a decision when they judge it suitable. But I cannot imagine them doing an extradition in the midst of the current chaos and protests engulfing diplomatic establishments in both countries and so on. But also don't forget, Rajdeep, Bangladesh is grappling with their own problems. They have energy shortages. They have inflationary pressures. They have declining investor confidence, the FDI not coming in. We have offered them plans for regional connectivity through ports, rail, and energy grids, which will actually help Bangladesh. But that depends heavily on stability in Bangladesh. So if I were a Bangladeshi, I'd say, look, we really are going through the economic tough times that's perhaps unavoidable. We need India to help stabilize this. Why are we making enemies of them? But unfortunately, they're going the other way. They're talking about defense pacts with the Pakistanis, and they are really, at this point, really seeming to want to give the impression that that India is their enemy. And this kind of narrative will obviously only appeal to the Gen Z of Dhaka who didn't live through the Liberation War, but they are probably now numerically much more significant than those who do remember India as a friend and a protector. So it's not going to be easy, Rajdeep, that entire relationship.
I take your point, but it brings me to another neighbor with whom we've shared a rather uneasy relationship, but a large border. Some would call it the elephant in the room, the Chinese factor. You spoke earlier about G2, about US and China in some way holding a summit, coming together. How worried should we be about growing Chinese influence that we are seeing in 2025, not just in the neighborhood, but as I said, across South Asia, but across the world? India seems keen to revive that relationship with China. Can we ever really trust Beijing, given the fact that even during Operation Sindoor, every indication is the military of Pakistan was fused almost with the Chinese? Is China the elephant in the room still, Dr. Tharoor?
Well, we're the elephant, they're the dragon in the room, but as a dragon, they do breathe fire a bit, Rajdeep. And what worries me about that is that with Pakistan and Operation Sindoor, you know that it's widely reported that there was real-time operation intelligence being relayed from Chinese satellites hovering over India and over Indian positions to the Pakistanis. 81% of Pakistan's weaponry, planes, missiles come from China, and their cooperation on the military and intelligence levels is very, very high. So I think to talk about a rapprochement with China overlooks the fact that the single largest project in the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is something that China considers to be in its own interest, not just in helping out Pakistan. So given all of that, I have to say, Rajdeep, that I would be, and not just me, I think large sections of India's foreign policy establishment would be deeply wary of giving any serious consideration to a complete reorientation towards China, because we boil down to capitulation. China is sitting on our frontiers and nibbling away at our territory. China is imposing non-tariff barriers on our exports. China is trying to encroach on our sovereign autonomy in all sorts of domains. China still claims Arunachal Pradesh. How do you go around talking about surrendering to China in these circumstances? No Indian with self-respect will do that, as far as I'm concerned.